We can't do trim, paint, none of that stuff as good as someone that does it, but that's all they do. So from there, we started then hiring, we were doing jobs and hiring out contractors and GCs, and we found that didn't work either because most of them, for the budgets we had, we couldn't hire a proper GC that would handle the job properly. So then we decided to start GCing the jobs, and then before you know it, we're GCing jobs for other investors. So, and we've done new construction and gut rehabs with additions now for the last couple of years.
So awesome. So Robert, I'll start with you because you've done gambit paint and carpet to additions to new construction. What do you think gut rehabs versus new constructions? On the gut rehabs, what are the pros and cons of doing a gut rehab with an addition? Just what would you say are the pros and cons of a gut rehab with an addition?
I guess these days from the get-go, benefit of the gut rehab, maybe it's like the permitting process, it's a little bit definitely quicker and faster, if you are good to go. If you really think that it's not going to be major surprises, which that's kind of hard to say, there always is surprises in the rehabs, especially guts. Because you never know, you didn't demo unless everything was clean already, which is almost unseen, And then the new construction, it definitely takes much longer to, start, but when it's good to go, it's much more predictable in regards to materials, and then, you're building something new, especially these days, definitely the new is it, new is the thing, It's been always new, so I think overall that's the, really short summary, that will be the major kind of culprits when you start. And then it's much easier to budget and have a solid budget with a new construction than any kind of gut rehab. Maybe something smaller, but gut rehab definitely. It's always going to be surprises. Time frames are longer than ever you think. So, definitely. It just doesn't stop.
Juan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest things that I find is very similar to that. And at the end of the day, the main thing to me as an investor is the budgets. You need to know how much you're going to make when you're going to sell the house. So with a rehab, your budget could potentially go over $50,000 over what you initially budgeted, and now that's your profit or a big chunk of your profit. So, and then I think on the sales side as well, new construction will sell for 5 to 10% higher depending on the area, and you're going to have less warranty issues, which is huge. That's huge.
Yeah, so Juan, both brought up really good points, but depending on the neighborhood, I mean, new construction, you can command a much higher sales price in a lot of neighborhoods. Some neighborhoods, rehabs are going for the same price as new construction. But in a lot of neighborhoods, you can almost, we've done jobs sometimes where we look at it, and after everything that happened, everything that could go wrong went wrong on that gut rehab. We could have done that same gut rehab as a new construction and gotten an extra $40,000. So it's something that you guys want to take into consideration when you're doing your evaluation. Just like they both said, it's much more predictable with new construction. Granted, the timeline on the front end to get the permits and to start is longer, but once the project gets started, Robert, it's a much smoother process. So, Robert, I guess I want to hear your take on, is Chicago a good market to do new construction, or is it a difficult market to do new construction?
I definitely think it is a good market to do, new construction. Because, in a way, even though you have all this, people are afraid of, the city, the building department and whatnot, in a way, somewhat, there's an order there, and it functions, so even though that sounds crazy to some people, and it's maybe, again, they're afraid of it, but it does, it has its own processes, and it's functioning pretty well. So, yeah, it's house time. These time frames are, as much as they are seem that long, again, they can be predictable. If you have the right architect, everything else is set up and good to go, it rolls. You can function very, very well. Yeah.
Juan, what's your take as far as Chicago versus maybe the suburbs?
Yeah, I have to agree, Chicago to me is a much easier place to do new construction. But for me, it's the commute, so, you know, I'm coming in from Schaumburg, so that's what I have to deal with, so sometimes I'm frustrated with that in traffic. But overall, you know, the difference is we found for houses, and I'm actually gonna be doing a new construction in Wheaton. I think I'm gonna be doing it, it looks like I'll get the job, but, I'm actually a little bit nervous about doing that because we just did a simple carpet and paint cabinet job in Wheaton, and it turned into a nightmare because of the building department, you know? Because it's turf based, you know, you're on the turf of the city, we own this, we got da-da-da and all this, whereas in Chicago, they don't care. The inspectors get sent all over, and they rotate them, you know, so, you may have a building inspector that you get used to seeing all the time, and then all of a sudden, he's no longer working that area, and they have him working on the south side, the west side, you know, and they'll rotate them, so and that's the nice thing, and the inspectors are pretty cool. I mean, I've never had an inspector that's been, you know, a jerk in the city, but I've had them out in the suburbs.
Yeah, the suburbs, yeah, I mean, the building department is God. I mean, you have to do whatever they say, or your project is not going to move forward. And I mean, they have that type of complex, some of these building inspectors. One thing I remember with Wheaton, since we're here and we're talking now, and I might forget to tell you about this later. So Wheaton actually outsources their inspections. So it's not even the city of Wheaton that comes out to do the inspections. And what I actually remembered about, I shouldn't be saying this on tape, but what Wheaton was really bad at was the people that were at the office. Once we got the people actually out at the house, they were very reasonable. It was the people at the office, and if you call the city of Wheaton, could be 9 a.m., 10 a.m., 11 a.m., 12 p.m., 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 4 p.m. The phone will just keep ringing. They do not pick up the phone. The only way you're going to get anything done is you have to physically be in the office. Versus Chicago, everything's submitted online. You have, and Robert, you brought up the architect. So in the city of Chicago, the beautiful thing about Chicago, if you have a self-certified, and if you're doing new construction or gut rehabs, make sure that the architect is self-certified and verify that the architect is self-certified. Because we once had an architect tell us he was self-certified. We were wondering why it took us 4 months to get permits, because he lied to us. So you can actually see if they are self-certified as well on I think it's on the City of Chicago's website.
Yep.
Josh, who does Wheaton outsource that to?
I forget the name of the company.
Some inspection company out of Belgium, I don't remember the name, and they might have switched
Changed.
now, so this was like 2 years ago.
A lot of the suburbs use like safe built for plumbing, like most of them don't have plumbing inspectors, it seems like, so they outsource it to a company that does it.
Well, all of the inspectors were outsourced, and that we encountered.
Through one company, it was
Yeah,
one company
one
that
company.
outsourced. But we've done other places where, the city of Madison, where they outsource that to actual licensed plumbers that have their own businesses. You know, so different villages are different.
Do you have to pay for those inspections in Wheaton?
I don't remember, probably.
That's part of the permit,
Yeah.
but if you have to do re-inspections, then they start charging again. Like, I think you're allowed like 1 or 2
Like, the
inspections.
city of Chicago Heights is a good example. You could have a perfect property in Chicago Heights, the best property ever, and everything can be perfect in the house. No matter what you do, they will fail you the first inspection just so they can charge you again on a re-inspection. So some cities are just that way.
Last question about the thing, do you pay for the inspection then, or the permits, do you pay the city, or do you pay that outsource?
The city, and then I think the city that pays that. So, Rob, I'm going to start with you because, with new construction, rehabbing, what are some of the biggest challenges? Because you know, doing new construction, there's a lot of moving parts, there's a lot of subcontractors, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. So what are some of the biggest challenges that you face now or faced in the past with doing large construction jobs?
Just in new construction or?
Both, yeah.
I mean, from the get-go, same kind of story was, beginning earlier, we were using all kinds of other GCs and whatnot, and that was, quite a bit of caused quite a bit of problems, major issues with that, all over. Just kind of hard. It doesn't matter even, like people would say, oh, go for cheaper or more expensive. Really, cheaper, middle, high, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't work. And again, it depends what kind of project you have with the numbers and whatnot. But I would say probably that would be the major problem was, GCs and allowing that just to work. It might click on a job, but then the other job will get killed. And then you get out of the, level. What I would say, And then so same way that's what happened with us as well. And then we, I was always kind of hands-on in that side as well. And then very early, we had our GC license. So my major pitch to all of them was I was never putting their GC license on the permit. It was always ours. And one of those things was, just so you know, if anything goes wrong, that I can just fire you right there and then, and we're done right away. There's no, changing contractors, whatnot. So I mean, that was that was actually my, segment, of interview to the contractor from the get-go. And also, I know it kind of sounds maybe a little bit out of the line, but you have to do something, So I would say probably that would be number one, point,
Yeah, so that's one of the biggest challenges if you're going to do, if you're a brand new investor, I'm gonna tell you right now, and you've never flipped a house, you probably shouldn't go after a full gut rehab where you're doing an addition. Again, a lot can go wrong, especially with you can interview a contractor, they look great. On paper, you could go cheap, middle, high, sometimes it doesn't matter, you're still, sometimes it's really hard to vet these general contractors that you're going to hire. So if you're a newer investor or possibly partner with somebody who has that experience, and you can kind of overcome that because that's one of the biggest challenges I see. Now, Juan, what would you say is some of the biggest challenges? I'll ask you this as a two-part question. Number one, working with general contractors, and then a challenge being a general contractor yourself.
So the general contractor, to me, the biggest challenge was getting getting an honest bid. Because what I found is a lot of these guys would just bid you a number to get the job.
And for you to buy the house.
Right, and so, and a part of it, so as an investor, you're going out there and you're running your numbers and, you're told if you're in Fortune Builders or any other program, you're told, get bids and if it doesn't come in, then you back out. But if your GCs that you're getting bids from aren't giving you accurate numbers, you may buy a house that you shouldn't have bought, period, and you're going to end up losing money. And so that's the thing we found is getting GCs that would actually give us honest numbers. Or maybe they don't even have the experience to do a job, and they'll tell you they do. I don't know how many people have said, oh yeah, we've done, I did this house, that house, and the reality is they might have been the framer on the job, or they might have done the drywall on the job, and so they give the impression that they did the job. So, and again, it's the budgets and the timelines, they always blew them out of the water. And so, so there's that. And as far as being the GC, the thing I found is then you're dealing with the subs. But the other thing we found is one of the reasons we started GCing is because there were GCs we wanted to fire, but it would have been more expensive to fire them and bring another guy on. And so we just decided to stick it out and just get through this deal and then be done with it. And what we found is it's easier to fire a sub than a GC because when a GC leaves, he takes everybody with him. When you fire a sub, you got to just replace one component of the project. And yeah, it still could mess you up a little bit, but again, it's the subs, especially now, everybody's busy. People that were trustworthy a year ago it's hard to get them to the job sites now because they're so booked up. Their prices are going up and everything else. So really, that's what I'm finding right now. Is everyone thinks they could jack up their prices, and you know what I tell these guys is, yeah, times are good right now, but when times aren't good, I'm not going to be using you, because then don't come calling me for work because you think, you know, we have a relationship, we've been working for years. You know, I think you need to honor that, and some guys will, some guys don't, but you know, that's what I'm finding right now as a challenge.
What are some tools, Robert, that you use to help you manage a job from the start to the finish? Do you use any calendars, any software?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we do. I mean, obviously at the beginning, it depends, you know, of the scale of the size of the job. But, you know, what I found out with our GCing, what really works for us was, you know, we get a somewhat / project manager in place, which is much easier, much more productive. And that's the guys, you know, could be the lead carpenter or whatever that is there. And then, you know, they would be solely, you know, they're all the time at work, a job anyhow. So, and then obviously, you know, we can kick in a little bit more, you know, a little bit more money, a little, you know, like bonuses and whatnot. And then just in general, depends about the size, you know, again, locally, you know, Excel, we have our own, you know, sheets and stuff that we use internally. And then, you know, Evernote and things like that, you know, scaling it. And we looked into some softwares, you know, for like, you know, commercial, you know, construction companies, and like Builderall, I think it's really good one. But again, I'm kind of checking it out right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm using software. I haven't fully implemented it as well because I got so busy. But I am using project software to manage. I do lay out the project on the schedule and assign tasks and different things. So I would highly recommend to use something like that, and then have your selections on there, your packages and whatnot. The one thing I will say, if you're going to get into this, before you get busy, do your work now, because that's the problem. Is I got busy, it's hard to do the work, and then the only way for me to do this is I'm actually scaling back for like 3 months, not taking on any new jobs because I need to get this stuff in place. Because I'm realizing if I don't have this stuff in place, when you know, when I was in my 20s and I worked a job and I left my job and I didn't have to worry about it on the weekends and all that stuff, you know, I could remember, I didn't have to use a calendar. I could remember every appointment that I had, schedules, whatever, up to like 6 months. It was amazing. I used to be pretty proud of myself in doing that. Now it's like things completely fall through the cracks because I got so much going on. And the reality is, that was because I didn't have much going on, you know, in my life at that time, I guess. So you can remember things. But now it's like so much is going on. You have to be able to handle it, and don't try to do it by yourself. I'm telling you.
I'm forgetting things right now.
You know,
seriously.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, and so things would fall through the cracks. What I found some of the challenges, because I'm not implementing things properly, or I didn't have the time to implement them properly, is materials wouldn't get on the job site. I would get the sub scheduled, and then the materials wouldn't arrive because, oh yeah, had to order that or this or whatever, you know. So, and that's again the other thing with the subs. Some subs, they're required to supply all the materials. Other subs, I buy the materials. So it, you know, and it depends on the subs on how I do that. But again, this is the management of it. So actually, I'm like scaling back a little bit, but I'm not really, because it's winter time anyways. But that's one thing I'm doing is implementing this, going through it. And actually, for me to put together a package for a house will take me a full week of 40 hours plus sitting on the computer, getting the numbers in place. And literally, once those things are in place, I will be able to create an accurate estimate for a job that will be within 5% of the actual budget within 1 hour, and have it completely detailed out what I'm going to do on the job. It will be like a 30-page detailed estimate that I can give to an investor that lists out everything that's going to be done in the house. It's just gonna, it's gonna blow people away, the way this is, because I'm already working at, and, you know, that's setting yourself apart. You wanna set yourself apart from everyone else on the market. And as an investor, you wanna do that. Do your homework. I know everyone wants to jump in. Spend as much time setting things up now while you have the time before you get too busy, because then once you scale, it'll start falling apart. So, anyway.
Robert, if you can add the commercial, since is this your first commercial project, or?
We did some smaller stuff, multi-units and stuff, whatever, but, not this scale, restaurant and stuff, whatever, no, not really, so.
Can you kind of explain some of the differences you've seen with commercial versus residential?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say there's that much difference. I mean, some materials and stuff, the codes are different. What I found with a little bit of the bigger jobs, the budgets are different. It's easier to get a budget because people expect it's a businesses, so there's a certain, funds already allocated, and it's, in a way, it makes it a little bit easier, to be honest with you, even though there's a little bit more items and stuff. So, once you, in regards to from the contractor standpoint, obviously we all know, if you have a really decent budget and, in general, and everything is like, set to the goals and lines, everybody's lives is much easier, and we can be quicker, and there's less stress and whatnot. And that's really crucial in those projects. So commercial, in my opinion, it's it's even easier than some of the residential. Might be a little bit more items and stuff, but it's the HVAC is, example, 50, 60 G's. Nobody's doubting that. That's what it costs, and that's okay because there's like 100 guys that can do it for 50. I don't have to shop to get a guy to do it for 5, and it should be 7. You know what I mean? So that's the problem. Yeah, and that's the problem. I mean, we're all investors. First, what I would say, I'm still an investor, but problem in my opinion, in many newbies or even the guys who are doing it for a while still keep on doing the same thing. Squeezing the stuff. The numbers. Pre-game. Market is changing. The neighborhoods. Everybody's there. Everybody's not there. I'm saying certain things. So I think that's very crucial. Like, just to give you an example, and you gotta, the funds has to be certain amount that it's allocated, somewhat real. Like, we're doing a project right now for an investor that literally, we are 7 weeks into it. We get one check for $3,000. We didn't get paid anything else yet. Because they, messed up the scope of work with the lender. I mean, we were asking to see that from the get-go, just to align the items, the usual. The sheet was literally 200-300 items. They were putting on the lender sheet, the draw sheet, outlets, the covers for outlets. Oh, that's all I can tell you. So I'm like, I was like, screw! I was about to eat my phone, and I was like, it's like why we didn't see this 3 weeks ago, so we can.
They had the outlets. They wanted the outlets on, or the outlets on the electrical boxes, and he's like in demo.
Like they're counting them, what I'm saying? Like, there's a drywall in like 4 or 5 different places. There's a framing and drywall on the same item sheet line, I was like, God, that's like a final, this is, wow. And things like that. There's a, but no. I was like, no. So we totally, we literally had to have a meeting with the lender, it was a conference call. Acting again, I was like, let's just strip it down. And we're gonna even market, let's say we are totally new contractors, which we did that way because we gotta have to be, otherwise we're not gonna make it, And then, so basically, 6-7 weeks we've been financing their project. We literally done the whole route, the electric, plumbing, and everything, so.
Was that the lender that was requiring all that detail, or the?
No, I think the investor filled it out and they just they didn't know what they were doing, so.
Yeah, all the way.
That's something too, if you're an investor, you need to be able to set your contractor up for success, because if you set it up like in this way, and Robert's a good guy, if he was a normal contractor, he would have walked. So, you got to make sure you're setting up your contractor for success, because if your contractor's not successful as investors, you're not gonna be
Yeah, but it's
successful.
also when you get older guys there, you know, plumbers, electrician, you got them going, you know, they engage them, they're already on your job, everybody's busy, da, 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 da. You know, you don't wanna like, you gotta leave them, it's hard to push them away. Whoa, we gotta stop it. Oh, what are you talking about? I just left the other job. Oh, why not? So it's like, you know, you're on a line with everybody else, you know? Yeah.
And one thing I want to reiterate that he touched on was the budgets that sometimes were given for a certain project. I have to stress this. Do not make a project try to fit into what you think you can make it fit into. It has to just work. Don't try to make it work. That's the biggest mistake that we find, because I'm given unrealistic budgets by investors. And how do I know they're unrealistic budgets? Because I'm an investor myself. I know what things cost. And sometimes, you know, investors were taught like, okay, you know, yeah, you're going to negotiate your prices. Give me wholesale prices. I get told that by, you know, fortune builder students. Give me a wholesale price, and I'm like, I'm a fortune builder student. I know the spiel that you guys are going to tell me. I know that. You know, the reality is, certain things can only go so low. Labor costs can only go so low. Materials can only go so low. And there's a breaking point where people are not going to do the job because they're not going to make any money. Why am I going to GC your job if I'm not going to make any money? You want to make $150,000, but you only want me to make $20,000 as a GC, and I'm there for 6 months, day in, day out, making sure the job's moving forward. It's not going to happen. And unfortunately, what you may have happen is you can hire a GC, and maybe he'll do it once because he's expecting something later down the road. So make sure your deal makes sense where everyone's going to
Make money.
make money, and especially your contractors. You know, and how do I know that? Because we did the same thing, you know. But let me tell you, that builder that's building another house down the road from where you're building your house, he's negotiating too. So he's getting his subs at wholesale pricing too. So, you know, if you are a student of Fortune Builders or something else and you're taught this, yes, it works. But that's in comparison to a homeowner. You're going to get cheaper pricing, but you're not necessarily going to get cheaper price than a builder that's been doing this for 20 years. Okay, so that's something you have to understand. You're like, oh, this builder, it cost him $500,000 to build this house. I'm going to do it for $450,000. Okay. Okay. You know, because that's your profit. You're going to end up hurting yourself. So, just a little tip. You know, don't try to force the deal.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna point out, like, you know, you're talking about commercial versus residential too, and I think the big thing that we also have to take into account too is union. You know, when you get into commercial aspects of things, all of a sudden now you are kind of obligated to use union labor, and your costs starts going up further there. There's a minimum at least that you
It's to a certain, you know, size of the job, not
Right.
necessarily like all commercial, no. Smaller stuff, no, yeah. Multi, depends on it. There's certain guidelines or rules, but not everywhere. But it's a good point, yeah, eventually, yes.
You haven't had the rat in front of your restaurant yet? No.
If you do, Brent's a big dragon blowing down on the rat.
No, my point to it though is that you're in a different tier altogether too. As you get into bigger projects, you're now at a higher level cost basis.
Correct.
Versus.
But the commercial subs are more expensive, but the budgets are also more expensive too. It's not.
But there's also on the residential, there's a union. I'm actually going to use a union company to do some of my work. Because they're not that much more money than a non-union company. So sometimes, just because you hear union, it may not be a bad thing. Because you're going to get, you know, as much as whatever people say, but I used to be a union technician. I never got to strike like the guys did like a month back, but I wish I could have when I was a tech. But you know, you're going to get better quality. And sometimes it's worth it to pay a little bit more to get, because in residential the problem is you don't always have the best people doing the work, and you can't afford it sometimes. You know, I mean, as far as like quality, you're not going to have people at the same level because there's more money in commercial. For an electrician, there's a lot more money in commercial. So you may not get the cream of the crop, you're not gonna get the professionals that send you invoices that, you know, their way of doing a contract is they send you a text message with the amount that the job's gonna cost. So then you gotta create the documents and all that stuff, you know, so.
And then getting lien waivers. So Dan in the back, Dan wave. So he drives all around Chicago chasing contractors down, shaking them upside down to try to get lien waivers out of them. But it's part of it.
Don't you set yourself up for some additional risk if you're mixing union and non-union subs on the same job? Isn't there a natural friction? No?
Not in
Not in
residential.
residential.
Maybe if it were commercial,
Yeah.
they're kind of coming to the, you know,
You smoke the peace pipe now?
no, unions usually call the non-union people scabs, right? So when a union person is on a residential, it's like they're the scab, in a way, because it's unusual, right? So it's yeah, there's no
I
problem.
mean, commercial is such a whole other planet, not planet, like universe, you know? Like there's so much of it, different levels and zones and whatnot, you know? So it's really, I wouldn't be worried about it. And you can have a certain jobs, if there's a union, you know, not an issue. They'll come and tell you, okay, you need to have a 20% of the workers or job scale union, okay? So you can really, it's not really like, yeah, somebody's gonna come there, you know, hey, when you got in, you have to, this is done, you know? No, it doesn't go that way. You know, you can, you know, there's negotiations and scales and whatnot, so, you know? So they'll tell you and you'll know, you know, and then you can, there's certain guidelines. You cannot just tell like, oh, I pulled the book, this is, you gotta do. No, it goes.
So Robert, if you could talk about working in the winter, what are some things, you know, we're heading into winter here. What are things you can do and can't do in the winter that people might not know?
Winter, like last year, you can do a lot.
Yeah.
Great winter.
Yeah. We were pouring concrete in January last year.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, not tons of outside stuff, concrete and stuff that doesn't fly, obviously, all indoor stuff you can if you have a heat, so I would say, make sure your utilities are on, get them going as quick as you can and, securing all those things, obviously, makeshift electric, depends about a project, what do you do, what's the scale, but, we do most of it in winter as well. I wouldn't say, again, I cannot do concrete if it's freezing, but, we'll do windows, we'll do siding unless it's, minus million, so. But definitely, obviously, you will scale before you know what's coming. Depends when the project is starting, what stage of the process, project is in, so.
Juan, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, winter depends, you don't know, like, the last 2 winters were actually good. We started foundations on, 2 winters ago, we started 2 foundations in January. And then we framed the houses, and then last year the same thing, but the year before that where it was -15 for like a month,
Yeah.
you're not doing anything, hardly anything, unless it's inside, so. But there are things you can do, like, we did have to do masonry on our one project in the winter, and my mason said, okay, what we do is we put plastic around the outside of the scaffolding and we have our heat going, we have to keep the sand warm, we have to keep the bricks warm, so they do all this, and they use propane or kerosene or diesel or whatever to keep that warm, so you could keep the job going, and you got to look at it. So he would charge what he called his 10% winter fee. So whatever days he had to do this, he would charge me an extra 10% for just this, and the workers would work a little slower.
Cost them extra too.
Yeah, and because it costs them extra, but the thing is, you have to look at it. Is it cheaper for you to keep the job going and pay that extra 10%, or wait a month
Or two.
Juice.
and then the juice you're paying on the loan or whatever as an investor, it's actually cheaper to pay a little bit extra for the construction. So you have to kind of weigh that. It's not always just about the upfront cost, but you got to look at the cost for time as well.
What's the lowest temperature you pour concrete, and what stuff you guys should just put in the mixture in the mix to help you pour lower temperatures?
You're talking about concrete?
lowest temperature, and then mixing what?
Like an admixture?
An additive?
I don't know that. I defer that to my concrete guys. I asked them, can you pour it in this? Is it, I believe for foundations though, they would go down to 15 degrees.
Yeah.
They would be okay at 15 degrees to pour concrete. For sidewalks and stuff, they want it above freezing. Because it's the quality of the concrete's a little different. The PSI of the concrete's different. And you can put that stuff in. But the big thing you have with excavation is usually, or with doing a foundation is busting through the ground. Because that will bust up the teeth on the digger. So that's usually what you do. But, if you're willing to pay for it, get electric blankets out there. You're paying for the electric and get the ground warm, and then you can cover some of this stuff. So you can do it. I mean, when they were doing the 90 expansion over there on the tollway, I mean, they were working when it was freezing out there and pouring concrete, but they were covering it and they were adding the additive and all kinds
Also,
of
that
stuff.
concrete is a whole other animal. Their concrete. So the thing is with that, again, not to do it, that's too much. There's a certain amount of cure that needs, and there's calculations and whatnot, and who's going to do that? Who can warranty that's going to cure correctly? So that's your risk. I would not do it. Almost. If I really don't have to. So but
Unless the concrete guy is willing to sign off on the list.
But how you gonna? You might not know that right now. But maybe after a year or so,
That's
it can
true.
start sinking and whatnot. And what then? And you sold the house. And he's the concrete guy
Is he still in business?
in business, and sure, whatnot. Who knows?
Because a lot of these guys in residential concrete, it's one guy with 2 helpers. I mean, that's their company,
I mean, that's normal.
All right, so real quickly, Robert, would you say, as an investor, not just as a builder, but as an investor, do you think if you have a house where it could either go got rehab addition, should you do that, or should you go to new construction? What's your take, as an investor?
Probably new construction.
New construction, okay. Juan?
New construction all the way.
So both Robert and Juan didn't start off in the trades. They actually, what's unique about them is they're the same as me. We all started as real estate investors. And like I said, I've had projects where, one comes to mind where we probably would have made an extra 50 grand, maybe even more by going new. Not only would we have made more on the resale, but our construction would have been cheaper. So we have any questions about construction?
What do you recommend? You talked about, you're trying to get a GC bid, and then, you get one number that's maybe not realistic because they want a job. What kind of safeguards would you put in place, or do they agree to, and I don't know if it's the same thing that you offer, to hold them to a time and budget from what they bid?
Yeah, I mean, that, as far as the budget, you can do everything you can with the timeline. And you can probably hold them to that. But when it comes to the budget, a GC is not going to stick around if he's going to lose money. So you could try to hold them to the job, but they're going to take off. If you're like, well, you quoted this, at the end of the day, the job, his costs are a certain amount. And most GCs are just going to take off. So that's where, and the question is, can you follow up that with some legal things? Is it worth it? Unless it's $500,000, I mean, it's not really, it's going to be hard to do that. And on the commercial side, I hear it's easier to enforce contracts versus on the residential side. So, so that's, I don't know too much about the commercial
Again,
side.
not to sound cliche, there's again, more meat on the bone, again, and, it's just, the contracts are different too, You literally invest more in contracts.
So to answer, I'll throw into your question about, the GCs. I mean, your best bet is finding somebody that's worked with a GC and can vouch, and that's going to be your best way of doing it. Now, the problem is a lot of people aren't willing to share. They've got a really good GC. They're probably not willing to share that unless they're going to partner with you, that sort of thing. And you could build in penalties if they don't hit timelines. But you will get, especially if you're not doing new construction, you are going to get change orders. It's just a part of, unfortunately, when you're doing a gut rehab on a house and you're exposing things are going to be found. I mean, we did a house where we bought the house, we couldn't get into the attic, so we couldn't even inspect it. Of course, the owners never told us there was a fire in the house, and come to find out, there was like this massive fire and all the framing, so we had to not only tear off the roof, but we had to redo all the framing for the roof. That wasn't just the cost that messed us up, it was the time. And it was like a 3-month change to redo the framing just for the roof. Because it wasn't on the original plans.
Yeah, we did the roof. The inspector came by for the roof, for the framing inspection, and he said, well, this isn't on the blueprints that you guys were rebuilding the roof. So he put a stop work order on the job. We had to submit it back, and it took forever to get the plan going again. So one thing I would say, and I stress this, and this, it's probably it's not what I would have wanted to hear as a new investor, because I'm like, I want to make all the money. But if you got a really good deal and you've never done a deal, partner up with somebody that has and give up a percentage of it, honestly, because at the end of the day, you're gonna make more money.
You could go the other way, even with a really good
Best lesson ever.
Yeah, because I didn't do that. We didn't do that. We learned it the hard way.
Same here.
Partner up and take a little bit less. Partner up with someone experienced and learn and let them teach you, because I'm more than happy to teach people what I know, what I've learned, the mistakes I've made. But at the same time, if I'm gonna do it, I want to make a certain percentage of the profit too. But we always, and that's the thing, don't be greedy, because the money will just slip through your hands and it'll just slip out. So if you have a good deal and it looks really good, I would say for 2 or 3 deals, do it, learn their system, and then you'll get an idea of the numbers. You'll know at that point, you'll learn what the numbers are.
What the numbers really are.
Yep.
And honestly, that's the only and the right way to do it. Only in the right way. And this is just like advice. Like I didn't do it, we all didn't do it that way, because obviously it was the beginning.
Because we were greedy.
We were, yeah, obviously. And then, there were projects, I'm sure you get, I knew, there's 100,000 there, no question about it. And let me tell you, God, I was lucky I went out with like 10, and it was that good, and everything was perfect. It's amazing how that works. But again, stick to the basics, check your referrals, references, even though it sounds cliche and stupid, you gotta do it. Look, everybody, I get lazy and I don't do it and I get burned. Even now, today, it just happens. It's always gonna happen, just what it is. And it's not all doom and gloom. This still works. We're still making money. There's money out there a lot. So you just got, markets are changing. But again, there's so many people that they did it. Like you said, definitely. I would love to go back and partner up. I would probably be partnering still up to this day. We still do, in a way. But.
Two questions. In your experience, whether it's you or you as the investor paying another contractor, what type of bonuses, the lowest bonus, works incentivized to get the job done on time? And two, following the legal aspect of underperforming GCs, why not go after their bonds if that's specifically what it's there for?
Okay, and residential, actually I didn't learn about the bonds. I didn't know about them, performance bonds. I just learned about them actually not too long ago. Most GCs in Chicago don't have those. And that's a huge thing. That's something you should probably ask for. I'm glad you brought that up, because that's something I never asked for. I didn't know about it. So it's a performance bond. It's outside, because normally we're told to ask for liability insurance and that kind of thing. You get it, and then you have a issue with a house, and let's say you get sued by the homeowner, and you're like, oh, the insurance will cover it. No, it won't. But if you have a bond, more than likely, and the GC or the contractor then perform up to the bond of what they were supposed to, the performance bond or whatever, But there is that as well. And I was taught not to do bonuses, you know, but I've kind of thrown that out the door now. You know, I got a job that got behind. I told the guys, you know, I told my trim guys, I said, get it done next week. I want it done by Wednesday, and you'll get an extra $1,000.
Guess what I got done, right?
Huh?
Got done.
It got done. I've never seen it move so fast. I'm serious. It's amazing. Because there are certain standard prices in the industry. So they're going to move at that pace that they normally can get a job anywhere else. But now suddenly you start throwing in these incentives and giving deadlines to them. It's amazing. And I was told not to do that. And you know, I'm not even charging that back to the homeowner or the investor I'm doing this house for. I'm taking it out of my cut, because at the end of the day, I'm actually making more money by giving them a bonus, because I have my deadlines I have to meet. I give deadlines. I say I'll finish this job in a certain time frame, and if I don't get it done, I'm getting dinged on it, you know. So, and especially in commercial, you have deadlines and you got to hit them. I mean, there are some serious, you know. That's why I always go back. I was so blown away by how quick they did that 90 expansion there on the tollway. It was incredible how quick. They rebuilt, I don't know, like 15, 20, 30 bridges, and they did it in like 2 years. And here, you know, I'm building one house in a year. I'm like, hey, you know, I was just amazed, because just the logistics in that. But a lot of that is deadlines. They put these deadlines in. So that was an awesome question. You know, if you've heard not to give bonuses and you're like, oh, that's the going rate. If you need to get the job done, start giving bonuses, but attach them. You have to attach it to some kind of measurable thing that says, you know, and then they'll be like, well, we got 90% of it done. No, the agreement was you finish 100% of it, you know, so that's, you know, that's something I've just recently started implementing, because I was told not to do that. And I think that's bad advice.
One last question. I saw your hand up.
Yeah. Robert, can you just speak a little bit about the deal you were talking about in Bridgeport? How did that manifest itself? How did you get involved in it? You said it's something you've never really done anything like that. Was it like a restaurateur or a group that came to you and said, hey, listen, we want to build a restaurant in Bridgeport with this? Like, how did it all come together and get involved?
Yeah, I got you. I mean, obviously through I would say through networking, and actually did other jobs that we were doing for them. Actually, we did some of the residential stuff for them as well, and so kind of came from that angle, you know. And they saw what we were doing, but I said no experience, but I kind of, maybe that wasn't all the way, you know, the other contractor, a good friend that's been investing for a long time, he's involved deeply in commercial. So we did some, I guess you can say we were subbing for them some jobs. So we were very familiar with all this stuff. So we had resumes, you know, I mean, they built out, I don't know, 50 restaurants through the city, you know, like major stuff, you know. So, and then, so kind of the people, we kind of knew them a little bit, you know, actually I knew them personally. Through some, so they have a local restaurants, few of them in the Bridgeport already, and then this came upon, and obviously they were also bidding out from some other, you know, bigger companies, you know, so the quotes that they were getting were absolutely insane, you know, and that, I mean, again, you know, a lot, like we're 60% of the cost of what they were getting, and it was really, you know, hefty. I'm talking about, you know, our current bid is $1.5 million, just to tell you, and that's just starting, and it's gonna probably go to 2, you know, so on a scope. So it's quite a bit, you know. So yeah, that was kind of. But the good things, you know, talking about the publicity, when that came out, you know, obviously right away they found out who was a contractor, who was everybody. So I mean, there's like a, you know, big makeshift, you know, had a rendering done, you know, in the window, you know, it's like it's just crazy, you know. Yeah. So yeah, it just kind of goes.
So real quick, how can people, we'll wrap this up with how people can get in contact with you, and then if you guys have questions, feel free to talk to Robert and Juan afterwards. So Robert, what's the best way if people want to reach out to you?
Yeah, there is, you know, obviously my, you know, I guess you could call the phone, you know, there's office and cell, you know, 312, it's 375-579. There's also a website, it's rbhomesconstruction.net. So there, that's pretty, you know.
How do you spell it? rbhomesconstruction.net. Yeah, most of the info is
there. It's kind of newer site, we just switched, so, you know, not all the pictures are there, but you'll see, it's probably there.
What was the phone number again? I couldn't write that down.
312-375-5794.
5794?
Yeah.
No. Juan?
Give you my number, it's 708-846-8340. And just so you know, I only do new construction. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, if everyone could please give them a round of applause. Really appreciate it.